Hey, this is Issa Nakazawa, your host for Transmission Studio, a show featuring the independent artists and community-based organizations that make San Francisco's arts and culture scene what it is today. Today, I'm super excited to be talking with Daniel Díaz, BAVC Media's own Director of Marketing and Communications, as well as Diana Sánchez Maciel, who is a producer and programmer based out of San Francisco. And today, we're going to dive into their work with CiNEOLA, which is a Latin American documentary platform that Daniel founded, and currently Diana is the co-director. So stay tuned for our conversation. Well, Daniel and Diana, welcome to Transmission Studio. It's such a joy to have you. How's it feel? How are you guys feeling this morning?
Very good.
Yeah, good. Happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure. And I would love to just start if you could each introduce yourselves in the context of the work that you do as filmmakers, and also we'll get into it after, but like your collaboration together. Dana, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I am a filmmaker. I have worked across like marketing and distribution and like production for like 10 odd years now, from back home in London, some work in Latin America as well, and then have been based here in San Francisco for the past 5 years. My work typically focuses on kind of like Latin American like stories, kind of like diasporic identity, and all the multitudes that those contain.
Amazing. Beautiful answer. Diana?
Yes, I'm Diana. I am a film programmer, curator, a retired filmmaker, as I'm kind of now considering myself for now.
Love that.
A little bit of producing, and also just community and student engagement with around film programming, around curation and everything. Partly grew up here. I was born in Mexico City, but all of my professional and educational career has been here in the Bay Area. So I have very strong ties to just the film community here in the Bay Area, and just all of that.
That was a beautiful answer, both of you, and I appreciate the context, too, of your work. I think what I was really excited about with this conversation is both of you bring so much in terms of your experience and all the different roles. And Daniel, we met through both of our work in the marketing communication space, but then we quickly collaborated in the work that you were kind of speaking to with CiNEOLA. So I would love to start there, because that's also where you two are collaborating. So can you tell us a little bit about what that is, the mission, and what compelled you to kind of start it?
Yeah, for sure. So CiNEOLA is, in its current form, it's a platform for Latin American stories. That's kind of like the most succinct, I think, description that we put out to the world. It started off like 10 years ago in Chile, in a very different guise. It was part of a kind of like accelerator program backed by the Chilean government. So I got a grant to essentially develop a crowdfunding platform for like independent Latin American filmmakers, and kind of just like interested in looking at ways of like diversifying what that kind of like those financing options kind of like looks like for independent projects in Latin America. So that's when I left London, lived in Santiago for a while. And then, various steps in between, I ended up here living in San Francisco, and that's where, CiNEOLA had kind of been dormant for a few years, and coming out here, it just felt like an opportunity to kind of just like give it a new form and kind of a new life, and kind of really bring a platform that like showcased Latin American storytelling, Latin American perspectives, in terms of the people telling them, and the the stories, the cultures, the like richness and realities of the region, and everything that brings with it. So also focusing on I think just on my kind of like expertise and experience with like distribution, with like marketing, that kind of creative side of stuff that I enjoy and know a bit about, at least. And so we kind of kicked off here with a 2020 online like film festival, where like many others, obviously forced to go online due to pandemic shutdowns and that, but BAVC was a co-presenter on that. I think that's when I kind of like first kind of like made contact with BAVC, and yeah, now we're in our 5th year of public programming in San Francisco, which is super exciting.
Yeah, congratulations. It's pretty major.
Thanks.
And then Deanna, how did you get involved? Like, how did you meet Daniel? And then I would ask, like, what specifically drew you to either the mission or spirit of the work?
Yeah, well, I met Daniel at California Film Institute. We both worked there for a brief time. I'm still there, but I think like immediately Daniel was really welcoming and wanted to get to know me more, and we just kind of stay in touch after he left California Film Institute. And then one day he invited me out for beers, and then he told me if I would be interested in joining CiNEOLA as a programmer, as a co-director. And I think when he shared that with me and we first started talking about that, I was really interested in just the idea of this kind of like experimental model of exhibition and distribution, and also the potential that it could be to present Latin American films in the Bay Area, or that we could be able to support Latin American filmmakers in presenting more of their work in the United States through tours, but mostly I think Daniel and I have, strong ties here to the film community, so we know that we could pilot a lot of ideas that we have around exhibition conversations, film community, Latinx community here, and with our work with the Roxy. So it was just a great opportunity to really delve on Latin American film programming and getting to know more of those Latin American filmmakers that are just emerging, that have something to say and have just a really unique perspective around their story. So
yeah, that's something that really drew me into your work, is like and it's in the actual description, or like the short kind of description of the work, but I think there's an emphasis on diversifying the representations of Latin American film, which when I like went to your showcases, I was like, oh, that's true. Like, you're not seeing the kind of the usual representations in like the dominant film world, and that really spoke to me, because I feel like I don't always feel represented on screen in the ways that I feel like get really flattened of like what it means to be Latinx and like the stories that we see circulated in the major cinemas. And so I'm curious, I think that word is starting to mean very little, like diversity. So I'm curious, like what does that mean to you? And if you can give an example of how you feel like you achieve that, either in the programming or in what you're looking for when you're watching films that you want to screen.
Yeah, I think my perspective is, somewhat maybe unique, or at least it's kind of like formed by my experience. I think that there is definitely a view within, the films that we would typically see programmed that kind of, represent like the like Latinx, like Latino experiences, especially what you see programmed kind of like in the US. And I definitely, upon like arriving here, was like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, I'm going to check some of this stuff out that you don't really get to see back home in like London. And I was like, damn, like that's not me. Like I really was like struggling to kind of like connect with that in a way. And then it made me really reflect on my experience as, Colombian, like born in London, raised in England, and like what that connection to that part of like that identity and that like Latinidad like really was. And I think that's kind of what informed a lot of it, at least like the early kind of like programming, in terms of really like that kind of like Latin Americanist view, really, of like looking back to Latin America. And that's kind of like how I would I guess identify or describe like what it's like in the UK, or at least this first kind of like generation of like Latin American migration to the UK, which I would say that my family was a part of. And there isn't really that that foundation in terms of like this like hybrid identity that exists in the way that it does here, where that that fabric is like very like tightly woven, and there's a lot of it there in terms of in terms of like, a US Latino identity, like we don't really have that. So it was much more about looking back at Latin America, looking back at the region. And I think that's something that's definitely reflected in terms of my interests, my tastes, and like my kind of like influence into the programming. And so yeah, I think that's always an interesting one. I think, I'll often like have to, kind of like state a case for like British Latinidad, which is kind of hilarious. Like I think just in the last like 2 weeks alone, like, having like my Latinidad question and people being like, "Man, you're not Latino," like
in an underhanded way, or
honestly not even like,
pretty direct.
One of them was a Colombian person, one of them was like a white like US man. Like
wow.
It's like it kind of and so I don't even think that there's I don't think there's anything like mean spirited or like derogatory kind of like intended with that. There's really just like a lack of awareness of like what the diaspora looks like. And I think that through my work in like filmmaking and through the programming that we're doing, I think it's really about kind of like unraveling that a little bit for people, because if you don't know, you don't know. Like there doesn't need to be like like any kind of like evil behind that.
I love that. What about for you, Diana? Like, what does that mean to like, curate diverse representations of Latin American stories?
Yeah, I mean, I think since I fell in love with film and cinema and movies, I longed to see more Latin American films and stories, mainly coming from Mexico. And, I think, as everybody knows, there's what they call here the Three Amigos, which is, Cuarón, Iñárritu, Guillermo del Toro, which are, Mexican filmmakers, working within Hollywood, working within the industry. And, living in the Bay Area, there's a lot of film festivals. I, would frequent those and everything. And I think that there's, in all of these spaces, I think there's just a lot of interest to be nostalgic and perhaps to also provide insight into just films that are comedic, that are light, that are kind of a lot of the industry in Latin America, or particularly I'm talking about like Mexico film industry. So I think that to me it was really important, as a film programmer or now working with CiNEOLA to be able to bring those voices and those stories and those films that really represent what I'm grappling with in terms of just like family dynamics and gender roles that are really, that I think that I'm grappling just from living into spaces, from dealing with my family now, kind of like feeling as an outsider. And so I think like those stories bring connection just to myself and to what really all of these Latin American culture, habits, religion, and all of that really means, and also in connection to perhaps bringing a community that has no familiarity with that, to just let them know that there is this complexity and this challenge. And to me, I think it's just really important to be able to bring Latin American voices and stories that are truly representative of all of those points that I mentioned, just like religion and family dynamics and gender roles that are, I think as individuals we're trying to, or as, new generation, we're trying to like break apart those and break away from that and really analyze all of that.
Yeah, I love that. I love thinking about like the kind of commitment to like certain thematic questions, or the way that the films are struggling through the complexity, which I think relates to what you were saying. I'm also curious about two things that we talked about, or that both of you touched on. One was kind of breaking down what you both meant about more experimental forms of distribution for like our listeners who aren't in filmmaking, and maybe those words, they don't really necessarily know what that looks like, because I think that stuff's really exciting. We talk a lot about representation on screen, but we don't always go into the mechanics of the behind the scenes decisions, which I think really impact outcomes in a field. So I want to start there. And then I'm also kind of curious, when you are curating and programming for something like CiNEOLA, where you're trying to support more emerging filmmakers, like what's your kind of process personally and collectively of discovering new films and new filmmakers? Because I feel like usually people who are good programmers are kind of diggers, or like know how to, like research and kind of find those films their own way. So I love hearing like people's kind of research process. So I don't know which question you want to answer, but distribution and your own kind of discovery.
Yeah, I think from the distribution side of things, it's, you know, a lot of it is just like about like kind of experimentation and like play and kind of having license or giving ourselves permission to like create this sandbox for that experimentation. Because I think that, you know, I've kind of like worked in that space again for like 10 years, like I like, and have seen like quite a broad range of, you know, like sizes of films, like marketing budgets, like audience sizes, and that kind of thing. And so I think that there's, you know, I was always really drawn to this notion of, you know, alternative distribution models that, you know, can empower the filmmaker and allow you to kind of like retain that sense of like audience and like independence that can then, you know, hopefully like sustain your career, or at least kind of like allow you to kind of connect with the right people. And I think that one of the things that CiNEOLA has allowed for is to basically try and extend our audience, or kind of like extend that sense of kind of like discovery to the audiences for emerging filmmakers that have had films that are, you know, that we feel are like great, are like worth and worthy of the attention that otherwise, you know, wouldn't make it here, wouldn't make it to the Roxy. And that's not got anything to do with like merit or like the film being like lacking. It's just like the opportunities for these spaces to program and also kind of like take the time, I guess, for that kind of like discovery piece when it comes to the programming. A big part of it was like short films. That was kind of where it started, and the initial like online festival was a short film festival, and the idea then was, you know, we also like distribute short films through our platform online at our website, at CiNEOLA, and so there's stuff there to watch for free, like excellent films that, you know, a lot of them have done like big kind of like festival circuits for shorts, and I think it's just about kind of giving them the like love and attention and care so they stand the best chance of like of reaching audiences, and for audiences to kind of discover them and really kind of like delve deeper into, you know, the context that like surrounds the stories and the filmmakers and the themes that those films kind of explore. So we play around with like, you know, we've done like original content like produced around like films, kind of like interviews, like podcasts, like obviously the in-person kind of stuff as well, and a lot of that is just kind of like experimentation and, you know, just like what we have like budget for as well, and time for,
keep it real.
Like it's just like, you know, it's all kind of like self-funded and has been for the past like 5 years, and so there's some stuff that's just like, you know what, like this would be wicked, but like we just can't fucking afford it, so like what are we gonna do? And you know, sometimes those limitations often like, you know, kind of lead to more creative kind of like ideas and that. So I think that's where that comes from in terms of that like distribution piece. And in terms of discovering films, I, you know, unlike Diana, I'm like not like really like a real programmer in like my mind. I'm just like, you know, I'm always just kind of keeping an eye on like what's coming out, what's playing at festivals, what's coming even through like, you know, work in progress, like programs, like labs, like co-production forums at festivals that, you know, these films might be like 2, 3, 4, 10 years out. But, you know, you learn names, you learn like styles, you keep an eye on what people are working on, and it comes to a point of like, just being able to reach out. People are always happy to share the work because more often than not they want more people to see it. And then being at festivals and watching stuff, and, you know, just kind of like going off of feel. But I'll pass it to Diana because I feel like you're really a programmer.
No, I feel like working at film festivals does give you insight into how filmmakers are struggling, and I think especially short filmmakers. And I mean, I think like what you are fed as a filmmaker, or your understanding of the industry, is that you're gonna make a film and you're gonna submit to festivals, and hopefully you will get into as many festivals, or the festivals that you apply to, and hopefully then you get some kind of distribution. And then, you know, and in most cases I feel like that is not the case. Maybe filmmakers are submitting to festivals, they get their laurels, they get those screenings, and that may be it, no? So I think that for me, like, curation is about, you know, working within film festivals I can create programs that, live within the festival. But I think curation, and particularly the way I see CiNEOLA, is that curation can expand the life of a film, and curation can further the conversation that the film is trying to create or achieve, is trying to highlight the filmmaker and empower them to talk about their work, talk about their film, and really create the space for the real conversation that they want to have with different communities and with different audiences. So it's very complicated, just like the whole distribution process and strategy for filmmakers. But I hope that, CiNEOLA and, working with Daniel, and the mission is really truly making room for short films that could perhaps be forgotten or could bury into certain festivals or certain distributions, and really kind of enforce just furthering the life of a film, creating more meaningful conversations around it. And so that's really key. And I forgot your other question, the other part of your question.
Both. I mean, I think that's such a powerful answer, like thinking about what you're all doing, or curation as like context setting too. Like I'm going to think about that. I think that's really important, especially going back to what you were saying about trying to, not even trying, but film as this kind of opening of understanding what the diaspora is. And sometimes in a film, there isn't full context for like the filmmaker, for the themes. And so I think through the like adjacent, content you're creating, or those conversations, I think that does so much for a film and for a filmmaker, I think, to honor the work. So I really loved both of your answers. And speaking of short films, you finished one this year, like applauso. Yes. And it's actually part of a screening that's coming up on the 2nd and 3rd for Colombia on Film, which is going to be screened at the Roxy, which we'll plug at the end. But yeah, I just want to dive in a little bit to, transitioning to thinking about you as a filmmaker, and just fresh off, and this isn't your first one. But yeah, can you tell folks a little bit about like what, I hate saying what it's about, but like kind of what it's about. Yeah. And yeah, I'm just curious what it's been like finishing and now kind of moving into that process as an actual filmmaker, where now you're doing the whole, applying to screenings, and you're kind of in that position now. Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting like worse and worse at describing it every time I have to. After having finished.
It's a hard question.
Have the synopsis here of your own film.
Thanks. I finished. This is like my second short as a director. It's called Junior Tu Papa. It is a personal documentary.
Shout out.
And it is essentially about a football match that took place in 1993 that I watched on a VHS tape, a recording of it with my dad back in England. And it's just one of those childhood memories that just like contains kind of like so much, it was a really historic football match in general, in the context of Colombia, the team that we support kind of like as a family, my dad's side of the family, won kind of like a historic title. It's a team that really represents the whole Caribbean region of the country. So there's like a really specific like regionality to the film that we wanted to focus on in terms of that Caribbean culture, the identity, like the territory. And we also delve into more of kind of like the socio-political context of Colombia kind of like around that time. And so it's conversations between myself, my father, and two uncles, kind of picking apart those memories and kind of putting together each of our like fragments to kind of rebuild this story in this cassette tape that's been long lost.
You did great. That was amazing. I feel like you're describing it. What was it, what was it kind of like embarking on a more personal film that I would argue kind of achieves what you're all talking about, where it kind of departs from, I think, really traditional choices around personal nostalgic films, or like being kind of expository and vulnerable in this very, like, I'd say overwrought way. So I do feel like it kind of aligns with some of the films that you distribute. So I'm kind of curious what it was like to make a more personal film from your previous one, which I would argue was still pretty personal, but...
Yeah, it's definitely a step up. I think there's definitely like a level of like trust in myself to make this after having made that first one. There was definitely like a fear of it just like being shit, and so like
Right.
working with the right people and bringing a team together in terms of being able to like hand over that trust and kind of like, you know, just like being kind of given that courage to actually like make this. So yeah, I mean, I think that the team was really like fundamental in terms of kind of giving like a balance and a perspective and making decisions that I think left to my own devices I would have maybe not had the courage to make, really. So, you know, I worked with 2 local filmmakers here. So yeah, it was co-produced and co-written by Camilo Garzón, who's a Colombian-American filmmaker based here in Oakland, and edited, and the music was composed by Daniel Freeman, who's another local filmmaker based here in San Francisco. And yeah, I always say that kind of like that collaboration was like so key in terms of me being able to just hand certain things over and kind of trust that those decisions would be made, and yeah, kind of giving me the bravery, I think, to kind of like make it, and a big team back home in Colombia as well. And yeah, I mean, we made the film like really like pretty quickly, to be honest. Like it was kind of like a 9-month like process.
It felt so quick.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I just like very grateful, I think, for the team and that kind of like support around it, which was like so fundamental.
Where, you know, we're going to be able to see it. So can you just tell us like where and when we can actually experience it for ourselves very soon?
Yeah, so the West Coast premiere of the film is going to be part of our CiNEOLA Colombia on Film series, which is an annual Colombian documentary film series which we do at the Roxy Theatre. So that's November 2nd and 3rd. The shorts block is kind of the closing like screening. That is on the Sunday, November 3rd at 2:45. And then we have 2 other screenings as well that I will let Diana talk about.
Yeah, let us know, Diana.
Yeah, we'll be opening up Colombian film Habla en Territorio on Saturday, November 2nd at 1:15 with the feature film La Laguna del Soldado by Pablo Álvarez Mesa. And then we'll continue on Sunday, November 3rd with another feature film at 12:30 p.m. with Nosotras by Emilce Quevedo Díaz. So 2 very powerful feature films that are, I think, just opposite perspectives of, you know, male and female stories. So yeah.
What's the best way for people to get tickets and also to stay connected just directly with CiNEOLA's work?
Yeah, the tickets are available on like the Roxy's website, roxy.com. You can find us on socials. Instagram's where we're most active, at CiNEOLA Films. And then all the information and all the short films that are still available to watch from kind of previous programming are available online on www.cineo.la.
La.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'm definitely going to be there because I'm perhaps a moderating conversation, so I might show up.
Definitely.
I don't know. But yeah, I'm so inspired by both of your work, and I'm really excited to be a part and a participant in this screening and forevermore. So thank you both so much for sharing your work, and yeah, we'll see you at the screening.
Yeah, thank you,
See you
Isa.
there. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching another episode of Transmission Studio. We will see you next time.